The Board of Trustees are hereby reconvening open session at 5:34 p.m. Trustees to identify themselves by first and last name to formally establish a quorum. Bill Mellinger, Trustee Area 1.
Dana Ridland, Trustee Area 2.
Cindy Gardner, Trustee Area 3.
Jordan Zarate, Trustee Area 5, Running Springs, Arrowhead Lake, Green Valley Lake.
Natalie Lindeman is doing some business and will be coming back within the next hour or so, and so she will not be in here at this time. So I will be presiding over the meeting. Would Heather Dominguez, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Extend flag to the right hand on the heart.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Heather. 7.0 and 7.1, announcement of reportable actions taken during closed session. There are no reportable actions at this time. 8.0, public testimony. 8.1, public comment period for items listed on this agenda and non-agenda items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the governing board. The public comment period is administered by state law and is the point in the meeting set aside for members of the public to share their opinions with the board. Open meeting laws do not permit the board to engage in dialogue or answer questions, though it may not take action on non-agenda issues raised at the public comment period. The board, for example, may refer any matter to the superintendent for review or take action to direct staff to place a matter of business on a future agenda. Protocols for speakers. Any person who wishes to address the governing board on agenda and non-agenda items within the subject matter of their jurisdiction must complete a green speakers form and submit it to the executive secretary to the superintendent before the meeting is called to order. Individual speakers are allowed 3 minutes to address the board on each agenda item. The board limits the total time for public input on each item to 20 minutes. Speakers who have complaints against board members or staff are encouraged to seek resolution to those complaints by using the Rim of the World Unified School District written complaint procedure rather than orally addressing them at a meeting. The board will not respond to such complaints until the applicable complaint procedure BPAR 1312.1 has been followed and has reached the board level. Where a complaint concerns a district employee identifiable by name, position, or other facts, the board cannot respond until proper written notice has been given to the employee pursuant to Government Code Section 54957. Decorum. The governing board is interested in the ideas and opinions of all stakeholders and endeavors to incorporate community views into its deliberations and decisions. At the same time, it must be able to conduct its business in an organized and efficient manner, free from material disruption. Therefore, in accordance with Board Bylaw 9323 and Government Code Section 54957.9, audience members may not disrupt, disturb, or otherwise impede the orderly conduct of this meeting. Open meeting laws do not confer any privilege or protection or expression beyond that otherwise provided by law. The public's understanding and cooperation are appreciated. 8.2, public comments. And we have 2 public comments, so we'll do them in the order, have them placed in my hands. So the first one is Cheyenne Powers, representing Jackson Powers. Topic, LAE Special Education Preschool Program Changes. Cheyenne. Jordan, if you can make them sure the mic is turned on.
Oh, sure.
Hello, my name is Cheyenne Powers, and I'm deeply concerned about the proposed changes to the LAE Special Education Preschool Program. I'm afraid that the new class structure will isolate students with disabilities, and that this discrimination will inhibit my son's chances to reach his full potential. My son Jackson has Down syndrome, which has greatly affected his physical and intellectual development. So far, he's an only child, so he does not have many chances outside of school to meet and interact with other kids his age. However, in Miss Dawn Bronson's peer model class, he's met his first friends, and most importantly, he's learned how to learn. Kids learn from other kids. At this time last year, Jackson did not speak at all. He showed little ambition to learn. He communicated using only sign language and body language. But thanks to the environment that Ms. Dawn has created in her inclusive peer model class, he has been inspired by his typically developing peers to start trying simple. If you create this opportunity gap now, it will surely grow in the years to come. And for this reason, I think it's crucial that Jackson is exposed to his general ed peers as much as possible. The California Department of Education website states that there is an undeniable evidence on the profound benefit of high-quality pre-K experience on children's brain development and key school readiness skills. Yet racially and historically marginalized, low-income children and children with disabilities have had the fewest opportunities to access effective and inclusive early education. This opportunity gap leads to the achievement gap that already exists when children enter kindergarten and too often persists throughout school. The Inclusive Early Education Expansion Program provides funding to increase access to inclusive early learning and care programs for children with disabilities. If the school is receiving this funding in order to increase access to inclusive programs for children with disabilities, then why is the school denying children with disabilities access to the so-called inclusive TK program? It's my understanding that the proposed TK program for next year will exclude children with disabilities from the chance to make friends, grow, and learn with their typically developing peers. I've been in communication with Special Education Director Derek Swen, and he has assured me that the district is required to increase the amount of time students with disabilities are with their gen ed peers throughout the day. However, Jackson's new class time and structure that he and his gen ed peers will ensure that he and his gen ed peers are not even on campus at the same time. I feel that the school board is not recognizing the special needs of its disabled students and deliberately misleading parents, and this is unacceptable. It is important to teach everybody early on to accept people who may look a little different or act a little different. So I'm asking you, please accept our kids and allow them the opportunity to thrive and grow.
Cheyenne, thank you. And Jackson, thank you. And then Jennifer Roulette, representing Mrs. Dawn's Dear Models Program. This is the discontinuation of the peer models program. Jennifer.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
As you all know, I've already emailed you, and you've already pretty much got the gist of what we're trying to get across. And I'll basically just be reiterating what she just stated. I'm representing the Peer Model program, but also my daughter, Noelle Roulette, who is 4 years old, has completed the first year of Ms. Dawn's class. And my other daughter, who apparently was too scared to come up here. Come on, honey. No, come on. Okay, well, Karina, who's now she's gonna be 8. She went through both years. And all I can say is from another perspective, she has both been have thrived, have learned to accept others, regardless of their differences, have learned to work well with others. Ms. Dawn is an amazing teacher. And to take away this program is not only detrimental to the peer models, but also to the special needs more than anybody else, obviously. They need that peer model structure program.
they're not going to get that. What you're trying to do is take that away. They may have classmates that can play with on the playground. That's not the same thing. And now you guys want to combine 3 and 4-year-olds, whereas they have different developmental needs, especially when they are service students. They have different needs at 3 and 4 years old. And you're also making it in the afternoon, around, I believe, 12 o'clock, from what Mr. Swen stated, and when I have been in communication, that is around the time most of these students are exhausted. This is not going to work. I understand they have stated that they want to try this and see, but I can guarantee it's probably going to fail. So we're imploring you to please reconsider taking away the peer modeling program. Mrs. Bronson has done wonders for these students. And I think this is just a huge mistake. Okay, so thank you for your time.
Thank you. And there are no other comments, so 8.3, RTA and CSEA representatives. Jim.
Hi, my name is Jim Whitesell. I'm a longtime teacher here at Rim District, and I'm also on the bargaining team for the last few years. And the RTA e-board wrote a statement they wanted me to read this tonight to you. Good evening, Cabinet, Board, and our new Superintendent, Dr. Kimberly Fricker. So, there we go. First of all, we would like to say that we are disheartened to see Michelle Murphy and Heather Griggs retiring from RIM. RTA wishes both of you well in your future endeavors and hope that you stay in touch. We look forward to collaborating with Dr. Fricker and the board on making sure that RIM provides the best for its students, staff, and community. We understand that many changes might come about for the upcoming school year. We just ask that we continue our collaborative relationship when decisions are made that affect the district as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. No CSCA representative.
None at this time.
9.0, governing board members' reports and announcements. Cindy?
I just want to say thank you to everyone for everything you've done this school year amongst all the challenges, the pivots that everybody had to do due to the pandemic, to reopening, to teaching and working in a constantly shifting landscape. I really appreciate everything that everybody did. And with that, I just wish everybody a very happy summer. Take care of yourselves, be with your families, just look it up, pick up your heels, go climb a mountain. Oh, we're already on the mountain. Never mind, it's already climbed the mountain. So just really just have the most wonderful summer and take a deep breath before we go back in the fall. And I just look forward to seeing everybody in the fall, even with all the changes and challenges that we have. I'm really excited for this break. I know I need it, and I know every single one in this room and in the district need it, the parents and students included. So have fun and whoop it up, because I'm woo. So I'm begging everybody to be woo for just a couple months. Right?
Again.
I don't think I have it in me to be a woo, Cindy, for that. I really love that. We're gonna make you a woo. Ain't gonna happen. I do want to ask everybody, yes, echo Cindy's sentiments in terms of it's imperative that everybody take time to rest, get some healing going on. We've had a rough couple of years, and I want us to start strong in August. And in order to do so, we all need to make sure that we get whatever kind of healing we need to do to be able to make sure we're there for our students for the full school year next year. We do have a lot of changes that are going on in the district. Jim and Mr. Whitesell alluded to the fact that we do have both Mrs. Murphy and Mrs. Griggs, Dr. Griggs retiring. Our community is small, word travels fast, stories travel and modify, and rumors somehow form. And I beg everybody to reach, I'm gonna probably jump the gun on what Jordan always does, but I implore everybody who has any questions to reach out and ask people who are in a position to know, rather than allow stories to grow. There are a heck of a lot of moving pieces right now, and we have fantastic talent in the district still. And we have a strong desire to provide the best possible solutions for our students. So rather than wonder, rather than pass along possibly inaccurate information, email one of the school board members, see if we can get together for tea or coffee, chat, ask questions, and help us be able to be as grim strong as we can be. Thanks.
Jordan.
Good evening, everyone. Echoing, of course, what my prior board members said. I do welcome the conversations, and I do always mention it, but you can come to the farmer's market and I'll probably be there usually most Saturdays. You can get your fruits and veggies.
Where's the farmers market?
The Renner Springs Farmers Market, it's multiple now in our mountains. So I'm usually at the Renner Springs Farmers Market on Saturdays. It runs 9 to 1. You can go and get your fruits, your veggies, and come get your school board question answers. Maybe you can get, you can listen to the music and we can talk about the state's financial situation as it relates to public education. So that could be fun. I do want to wish everyone a great summer, and to Sheldon, we'll certainly miss you. You've done a lot over your 5 years here. You built back relationships with the community, with staff. And I really appreciate that. You are also leaving this district, it should be noted, in a much better financial position than when you started. So your leadership expands from relationship building to physical things. I appreciate it very nicely. And the rest will be in my letter. Thank you.
So many things actually are continuing to go on. We did actually have a very brief report, but I just want to say that there's a lot still happening with the state finances and the state budget, and we're going to all have to keep working on that and watching what's taking place there. And Jenny will, I'm sure, help keep us informed as we continue to see those various reports and what's actually going to be the final budget, which will still be months off. And so we'll keep making those adjustments. Dr. Great, it has been a pleasure to have you come in at a challenging time in our district with many things that you had to take on, which I think you had to start it's more than start the job running. It's like you had to jump on the train that was flying by. And in my opinion, you have done that exceptionally well. You have been really a blessing to me and the board and to our full school district, and I really appreciate it. There's things that you've helped us to, I guess, clean up, repair, adjust, and I appreciate what you've been willing to do in the time that you've been here, and wish you many blessings in the midst of your life. So thank you. After how many years in education? Oh my goodness, 32. Only 32, sorry. So I appreciate you and thank you for that. Michelle, I got to see you. My first encounter with you was actually at a school board meeting at Valley Elementary School when our early act students, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade leaders were actually presenting to the school board and did an impressive job. But what also impressed me that night was that the board was still in impasse with the union, and you had stepped into this position after we were already in impasse. And I watched you from that day always operate with integrity, with professionalism, with a heart of caring and compassion, and with the ability to work with all people and truly care about every single person you've been working with. And so I'm going to miss you and appreciate you. And I just have to add that I don't think people probably know how much pain you've been through. And I'm not talking about your back right now, but the challenges you've had to face with what it's like to be the superintendent of a district in a mountain community where we do pass lots of rumors. But to be superintendent at a time when you had to say goodbye to your mother, when you have watched the physical challenges and hospitalization of your father, and to be so many miles away from both of them, and yet you've continued on. You've also tried to speak to us all about wellness and taking care of ourselves. I think, like you said, like you didn't take care of yourself, but that's your sermon that you're preached. I don't need to. But on behalf of the school district, we love you. We appreciate you. So thank you. And the good news is, the good news is that we believed in you so much that we trusted you to be a part of the process, and you've already been helping with Dr. Cricker and the transition that she will be making, and you helped us make, I think, an excellent decision, and that's another part of, I think, the way you blessed us into the future. So thank you. And with that, 9.2, Superintendent.
Well, I should say something joyful or funny that this is my last board meeting and my last Friday update was sent today. But it's with great sadness that I be grim. I have never done any job without putting my heart and soul in the district where I've worked for 34 years. And Rim has my heart and soul. So I've appreciated being in classrooms and getting to know you and being a part of this community. I've appreciated that I was allowed to establish friendships while being the superintendent that will last a lifetime. And Rim family and Rim pride are two words that, or two sayings that we always use here. And I'm proud to retire as a Rim family. I spent the last 3 days with Dr. Fricker, and she knows how much I care, and will be available to her for the next year in her transition. She is a wonderful human being. I've got to know her very much, and we have become fast friends. We are very much alike, and she has a big heart for Rim already, and will be a lot closer than I was, but I still made it to a lot of things. And so I just hand over the reins knowing that I'm leaving Rim in great hands, and that I appreciate that I was allowed to do the work to help Rim become a better place. And you will go far beyond what I have done. So thank you for allowing me to serve and to be here with you all. You will be greatly missed, and there's always a guest room in Tennessee. So thank you very much.
Love you, Michelle.
10.0, reports and presentations, student learning and achievement. 10.1, equity and social justice committee presentation from Dr. Judy White and committee members. We are privileged to have Dr. Judy White, who has been our consultant, and some of the members, unfortunately, some of our student members have had to back out of being here tonight to make the presentation. But I've served as chair of that subcommittee, and I'm really proud of the work that's been done. And I need to say that I realize there are all kinds of fears as to what a study like this and a subcommittee like this in equity and social justice might do. I think as you hear this report and some of the recommendations, you'll realize that there is not an agenda to somehow classify any population as inappropriate or blamed for anything. This is about what we do to bring students together and offer them the best opportunity for a good education and all students. And so, Dr. White, would you please come to the podium? And you have a full presentation to make.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
All right. I have had the opportunity to work in the field of education for over 42 years. And I visit districts since I've retired to help support them in whatever way they want supported. And I'll tell you, Reinventing World is a very special place. I commend this board for wanting to make sure that all students' needs have been attached. So as I came in, I wanted you to know that the superintendent advanced had stakeholders applied to participate on the committee. So after that, she selected, or you guys selected as a team who will be on the committee. My approach is to address as a listener, because you don't want to come into a district and make recommendations. You want to find out what it says, and you want to hear the voices of multiple stakeholders, and most importantly, the students who we say we are serving and their perspective. We know that listening is very important. So we developed a listening tour, which included caring circle. So when I would meet with groups and meet with students, I would ask them, how does the district show caring? Started off on a good note, and caring means you're going to be responsive. Caring means you care about the total person. And so they gave me their responses. And then the second question was, how can the district show more caring? And that would open up the door for students to be able to talk about their perception of gaps. We took their voices and we came back to the committee, and there was a lot of scripting involved, more than 250 comments, and then we arranged them into themes. And then from those themes, and also the other voices, we were able to come up with recommendations that you will hear tonight. Please know that I commend your outgoing superintendent as well. And she talks about her heart and soul. So her desire is for Reinventing World to even get better. It's already good. You have a new superintendent, but the goal is to get better. And how you get better is by looking at truth and identifying where you can go forward, and then actually taking action. So I'm hoping that as we as a group continue to share recommendations, you will understand that it should be something on a shelf. You should implement what you can. You should validate what you can. And then things that might have a cost associated with them, you want to be able to still keep it on the list and then secure those funding so that you can always keep moving forward. So I'm assuming that this will go to the right when I push it. All right, so the agenda for tonight, and we're not going to be long. We're going to talk about the goals of the Social Justice Committee. We're going to go over the mission and recommendations, and the student voices. I will be integrating them as we go through the presentation. And we'll end up with a couple of quotes. So the goals of the Social Justice Committee, as outlined by the team, was to create a mission statement and also to analyze the themes and the patterns from the responses of students and adults, as we talk to others as well. To analyze data, we brought in data, but some of it was dated because of the pandemic. We couldn't compare the growth, but we're looking for things within the data as well as gaps for student achievement. When we listened to the student voices, we had to look at policies, practices, and protocols, and then weigh in our opinions from the stakeholder vantage points. So when you had a parent that was on the committee, they understood it's not just their opinion, but they think about what about the other parents that I'm representing. Our board members had to keep a local view, and they were there more for observation and make sure that we were actually being true to the process. And then your administrators, again, not becoming defensive, but looking at it from an administrative view. And then we identify recommendations that will address and improve equity, inclusion, and social justice. We don't want that lost. Right now, there's so many people throwing out a lot of adjectives, a lot of acronyms about different things. But the heart and soul of the world is that no child would feel excluded. And that's what drove us to make sure we were looking at inclusion. So at this time, I'm going to ask Charles Beramontes to come up and talk about the mission statement that we developed. So team, to save time or maximize time, we might just want to stand to the side and that way.
Good evening. My name is Charles Beramontes. I'm a parent in the district, and I was honored to serve on this committee, and I'm even more honored to read to you the mission statement that we collaboratively came up with as part of the work that we did for the district. So without further ado, I will go over here. Oops. Okay. So the mission statement that we developed for the district and for the board to consider. We commit to providing all students with support from staff, parents, and community, a safe and inclusive environment which promotes respect, kindness, empathy, and acceptance of one another. Each student will have fair and equitable access to educational opportunities and the necessary resources they need to reach their full potential. Our commitment extends to eliminating barriers by changing and monitoring policies and practice that limit access and success for every student. Thank you. Tori Berg will follow.
Yeah, he followed instruction. Tori's going to be talking about recommendations, but before we go to that page, I want to say that when we identify the recommendations, we talk about the feelings of the students, the facts that we found, the findings, and the foundation of what we posit. Please note that the recommendations are not presented in a priority order. They're just there. It's up to the board to decide what is priority. And so that's up to you. So we want to make sure that you know that it doesn't come. And now at this time, I'd like to introduce to.
Thank you.
So board, cabinet. The first recommendation, again, not in priority, would be to provide English learners equitable access to the entire curriculum at the high school level. Currently, we have an ELD elective, which limits their access to the full curriculum, limits their access to electives, AP classes, honors classes. In high school, students voiced their concern with, because they're in an ELD class, they don't have those extra opportunities. At the middle school level, there were concerns voiced by students that they feel, or English learner students feel like their assignments are at a lower level and they're not being challenged as much as a non-English learner student. Our second recommendation would be to replace the current interview process for selecting ASB officers with an election process that includes student voices. The recommendation would be to mimic a normal vote for elected officers so that as many students as possible could have their voice heard in their student body representatives. And a possible solution would be to get a committee of teachers, administrators, students to get a committee together to revamp that process. The third recommendation is to evaluate current behavior programs and implement an appropriate behavior support program at all levels. Currently, at PBIS is not working at the high school level, and it's inconsistently implemented throughout classrooms. We, at the high school level, we have PBIS rewards. Some teachers use it, some teachers don't use it. Some teachers have rewards, they give points, the kids have no way to redeem points on anything. And so looking at a more efficient and effective program that the whole staff and student body could buy into would be something to look into. And a task force is recommended with a similar makeup to the Equity and Social Justice Committee. Students, teachers, staff, administrators, parents, community members to look at a possible solution. I'm supposed to cover number 4 as well. Dr. Chair Charles Veramontes, parent and community representative.
Okay, continuing on, bullet number 4, provide quality professional development for both certificated and classified staff. So we as a committee acknowledge the importance of our staff through all levels, whether it's teachers, IAs, food service workers, custodians, bus drivers, the whole gamut. They're working with our kids daily and they are the bread and butter, right? So we recognize fully and support training for them as we continue with the equity and social justice work that we are engaged in. Number 5, we thought it would be a great idea to start a challenge day at the middle school. This would be in support of student engagement as they also are part of this process that we are engaging in. So this would serve as a mechanism to highlight and bring to the students a direct connection to the work. Next, we talked about reviewing, update discipline matrix and aggressively address bullying through prevention, intervention, and consequences. So basically here, the bullying came up as a thing that we reviewed. And so we also looked at matrix and how this is being addressed. And through student voices, it appears that we need to do more. And so we think as a committee, we'd like to recommend that we review those policies and those matrices and how they're implemented. And again, this ties back to the training that we talked about earlier, and making sure that if we see fit to make changes, that we change or that you change, that you provide training to staff members in that process. Then we also felt that it's important to create intentional safe spaces on campuses. We know that at Rim High School, we've got a wellness center. We recommend that we review that center for completeness. We also believe that we should be looking at the needs of the the middle school MPH and our elementary schools to ensure they have safe places. Where possible, we'd like to have teachers to have safe places within their classrooms so that students have direct access to somebody who can assist them. We understand that there are budgetary considerations for this, but we'd like to present that to you as options for you to consider. At this time, I'd like to pass the baton off to Cindy Parker.
Hi, I'm Cindy Parker. I'm a teacher on special assignment for PBIS, specifically in the district. 3 items that I'm supposed to be done are number 8, and again, these are not in order of importance. Is to provide assemblies for information, inclusion, inspiration, and unity. And what the comments were from our people that we took data from is saying that if we have assemblies, and I know that due to COVID that was kind of not something that we could do, but moving forward, we'd like to see some assemblies that can get students' attention to emphasize that the school expectations that are more universally spoken. The assembly should be diverse, provide information and model inclusive practices, and bringing outside motivational speakers would be excellent to inspire the students. Number 9 was increase community involvement by having businesses, alumni, and service organizations volunteer and provide services. So now that we're kind of getting over the hump of COVID, we want to be inclusive and include our community members and invite them back into our classrooms as volunteers and being helpful to our students. And number 10 was expand participation in the awards program, sports and extracurricular activities for all. One of the comments that we heard from the people, the stakeholders, was that students don't know about all the opportunities that they have to get awards, and then specifically like reevaluating attendance awards, that maybe we can have awards that are not specifically perfect attendance, that we can evaluate what it means to have good attendance and be a team when we present that, make some decisions about that, because we are striving for 95, right? Not 100%, so we still want to be able to give awards to students. Okay? Yeah, I'm going to introduce Victoria again. Thank you.
And I will be presenting the last 4 recommendations and not in particular order. Number 11 is to consider district-wide AVID implementation. AVID is a nationwide research-based program that has high student success. I'm really passionate about the program, being a middle school and high school AVID student, AVID teacher, AVID set coordinator, now district liaison. It increases student academic achievement. It prepares and promotes college and career readiness. It helps students succeed in post-secondary adventures and endeavors. And these strategies can be used at every grade level, not just the middle school and high school. And so that will take training for all teachers of how to use the strategies and how to incorporate the strategies into their lessons. Number 12 is to increase monitoring on the bus. A lot of comments that we got from the students were concerns about the bus and social media, being filmed on the bus, bullying on the bus. They felt like the bus was a target area for bullying. So, and they felt like there were no consistent consequences for when they reported bus incidents to whether it be the bus driver or a school staff member. So, increase monitoring on the bus and develop a plan to support consistent consequences for poor bus behavior and be proactive about it. Maybe teach students proper bus behavior at the beginning of the year rather than just be reactive and consequences. Number 13 is to revisit the dress code for middle school and high school. And review for discrimination by gender. There were a handful of comments that felt like the dress codes target students more so than male and is discriminating towards female dress over male dress. So just review that and make sure that we're in Title IX compliance and possibly get a committee together to look at those dress code policies and work as a stakeholder group to look at those. And last is parents of English learners need translators, especially for IEPs. The availability and the ability of our translators needs to be reviewed so that all parents and all students have equitable access to meetings, curriculum, translation services, especially in meetings that are high in reality. And then I'm going to pass it back off to Dr. Judy White.
Thank you, Jane. Now, I'm hoping that you heard them mention the voices of the students, because the voices of the students are so important. In some of my listening sessions, they were actually fine. In some of the sessions, they said, "Lady, can you come back? We need to talk some more." But that means that we need to pay attention. How do we get there? It begins with a decision. You have to decide we're going to take action. And you have to be intentional about the action that you take. I love this quote by Mahatma Gandhi. It says, "Our ability to reach unity and diversity will be the beauty and the test of our civilization." There's so much division right now in our country. And remember, the world, you're in the perfect place to be able to implement some practices that continue the journey of unity. In summary, equitable access was a word that kept coming up in our groups. And equitable access is the notion that every student in any classroom, in any public school in America, should have the same opportunity as any other student for being taught by a great teacher as measured by percentage of course sections, effective teachers, participation in school activities, and reflecting inclusivity and differentiation as needed. And that is something that was emphasized over and over again. We want what the students need. I want to thank you so much for the opportunity to work with the team. And we kept our presentation short, but believe me, when we were together, we would do activities, we brainstormed, we did not take it lightly. We have a great group of people here. And there was Dr. Dennis Cambrio. He said, "We are only as good as our quality." So this could be a nice little presentation where you really make it great by following through. So thank you for this opportunity.
If I can pass it back to you, Linda.
Yes, I apologize for having to be out. I am back. This is Dr. Madeline in the trustee area 4. And if there are any comments or questions?
I do have just questions in terms of the definitions.
Sure.
Going to recommendation number 3, discussing behavior. Is there any particular behavior that is implied with, trying to scroll back up here in terms of getting the verbiage. Here we are. So that, yeah, for appropriate behavior support programs at all levels. Is there specific behaviors that we're talking about?
And so the need for the program consistency, that was being recommended very loudly. But some of the behaviors that students mentioned, and I believe one of our presenters also, the bullying. The bullying was at a higher level than normal. When I say normal, as opposed to pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. There were some instances where students reported derogatory slangs that had to do with either race or gender. And so that was something. And then also I remember hearing student voices that they felt in some cases that students might be responding too aggressively to a teacher, and that the behavior, the response to that was not appropriate. But the bullying was probably the primary one, but those types of behaviors. We didn't hear about fights. We heard about the bullying more. So then that goes into your emotional safety. Yes.
And then the other, thank you for that, is on number 5, talking about challenge day at the middle school.
Yes.
You can describe what challenge day is, please.
And I believe that, she's, we're gonna have Tori Bird, the principal, but that is more of a placeholder, and it should have been a challenge day type activity, because there are other groups that perform it, but let her go ahead and explain what we're seeking.
Thank you, Dr. White. So Challenge Day is a program that you can bring to a campus, and Rim High School is actually bringing it to Rim High in October this upcoming fall. And we'll have 9th and 10th graders do the Challenge Day, about 200 students. And it's a day where they come together in the gymnasium, and they're hosted in the gymnasium all day, and they're not allowed to go out. So we provide them lunch, we provide them breaks, we provide them snacks. But they're grouped into 5s with a facilitator or a monitor or a mentor. And Challenge Day personnel come in and lead the day. And it breaks down barriers. It's students to see that they have more in common with one another than differences. We try to target students from various groups on campus and students with various needs on campus, so that we have a very, very diverse group. And something that the recommendation said was to possibly look at Hesperia's model for this. At Oak Hills High School, they do what's called the Bulldog Day, and every single freshman has to go through the Bulldog Day. They get pulled out of class, it's an entire day, and they do just that. They do it 75 freshmen at a time. And if they do the Bulldog Day, they get a cord at graduation. And so it's just something that they build on every year. Every single student goes through Bulldog Day or Challenge Day. Santa Maria calls it Respect Day. So it's just a program to bring students together, break down barriers. When I did a tour for a 10-year reunion back 3 or 4 months ago, for a student or 10-year reunion people, they were saying, when we got to the old gym, they're like, the most memorable thing about in high school, my entire experience was Challenge Day, and how eye-opening it was and how life-changing it was. And it really showed me that me and this kid that I've never talked to and I had preconceived ideas about had so much in common, and we're still friends today. And so they kept bringing Challenge Day up. So if people from, Rim High graduates from 10 years ago are talking about Challenge Day and the impact it had, and the positive impact it had, I really think that that's something that our students can benefit from. When we talked about it as a committee, it was talked about looking at the student voices. They said that they need opportunities to build those connections, and they need opportunities to have that conversation facilitated. And so looking at a Challenge Day, not just as a high school one and done, but as a reoccurring program every year, and then maybe something we could do in-house and take it down to the middle school level.
I would be remiss if I didn't share with you one that was gained that's different from other districts. And that was the students' perception that geographically there's discrimination. And so I didn't know, when I'm down the hill, I'm like, oh, there's a mountain. But they said, no, there's a crest line, there's an arrowhead, so they would talk about different places. But it was widely shared at both the middle and the high school level that they felt that there was preferential treatment towards a certain community and that there was discrimination towards a certain community. So just be aware of that. And I didn't want to walk away without bringing that forward, because that was mentioned by many students. And when it was mentioned, it was a lot of parents. So you could actually, one thing I would recommend that you would look at activities, officers, special ed, all different things, and then just aggregate it by location. So we're good about just aggregating the different metrics, but by location, and see, do you see gaps there? All right, thank you.
I'd like to expand on what Dr. White said. The kids in further discussion said that they just see that there's a real big difference in treatment between the haves and the have-nots, and a big difference in opportunities between the haves and have-nots. So it's an income layer to that whole thing, geography, that was added into that conversation by students.
And I see a certain, I'm a body reader. Now, some people are like, okay, maybe that was your first time hearing it. Let the data speak. Just look at the activities, the access, and the students were able to give us clear examples, and then you can see, so it's not something we're making up, they're perceiving. It is something that they can document.
Let me ask for clarification then. Was it an economic or was it a geography or was it?
It was all. Because the final statement for the students is that the poor kids, they said that specifically. The poor kids don't get the same.
Thank you, Dr. White. And just as a reminder, it is on the agenda for our retreat, so we will talk about recommendations and
Yeah, sorry, go. I was just gonna say that I also loved how in developing the mission statement, we took the words of the voices that of the listening tours, the word fair, the word empathy, kindness, respect, those words. And when the committee worked on this mission statement, they literally were checking off what words we transposed into the mission statement. And we got a lot of the words into that mission statement from the voices of everybody, from the listening tours. Sorry.
I personally want to say thank you to each of you for participating in the presentation tonight. This is just a representation of the incredible people we had on this committee. There were a number of people that asked to get on the committee, and we had to limit how many we could have, and everyone participated really well, and I really appreciate that. And I want to thank each one of you for what you've done and for being part of this committee.
reports and presentations, setting directions. 11.1, National School Board Association, NSBA, share out from board members. So I'd like to open just the dialogue or discussions and see if you'd like to start.
Don't start with me, because Jordana has a nice, what is it, PowerPoint? I don't even, oh my God, Jordana. Okay.
So I did not get my documents to Sue until, and I like seriously reviewed all of this late in today. I realized that all of the notes that I took in all of my workshops, I put on my notepad in my phone. And when I changed, my phone died and I had to get a new phone. Apparently, I haven't been backing up for 3 months. My iCloud was full. So I lost all my notes. So I had to go back to the NSBA to look at where I actually attended and then started pulling the presentations, and I emailed some of them to you. So sorry about that. On Saturday, I attended a lot of different workshops on the same theme, which is elevating the student voice in governance. And I know that several of us took those workshops in December at the AEC, and so I just wanted to continue that and would it be lots of ideas on how you can better utilize your student voices. We can take what was already set by the equity committee listening tours and visit, have listening sessions on each and every campus, and taking that to guide some of our work and get feedback if we want to present a specific question to the kids. There's also the ability for our student board member to be more active and advocating for student voices. There's different ways that were presented in terms of having an advisory group. This was more geared towards high school students, but it could be replicated in other campuses in different ways. But having students bring forth something that they wish to work on, meaning this is an issue, whether you want to talk about bullying, and then what they work on solutions to that. And then the student board member presents that to the board in a report. So that the student board member, with either guidance from the superintendent or the principal or whatever, they are the ones driving the boat. So you're teaching them governance. And the groups put together by, whether you want to call it an advisory panel, committee, whatever you want to call it, the real key was, again, builds upon what we just heard from our equity and social justice committee, is making sure that you have an inclusive and really diverse group of students. Those students that you may not see in leadership, yes, have leadership kids, but where are the kids that are, when you see them sitting in lunch, are they kind of off to the side? The quiet kids, the ones that are flying under the radar, our EL kids, our special ed kids, that being very inclusive when you do this work. So I sent you one in elevating student voice in K-12 education governance. The state of Washington, they have taken it even further, and they've done statewide elevation of student voices and student governance, where the students are really networking across the state on student issues and the topics that we've been talking about, bullying, whatever, not dress code, I'm sure, because it's really super specific, but they really took it to the next level. On Sunday, I think I went with you, Jordana, Life Ready Rural Style. So a school district, I'm gonna let Jordana talk about it because she's got her little PowerPoint, but the big ticket was that district was brave enough. They're very similar to us. They are isolated. They have different communities. They have people that live in the mountains that come down to their schools. They're in a valley. They have a lot of second home people. Who are very mega wealthy, that are the minimum requirement to buy property is you have to buy 25 acres and have this awesome house. So they had a lot of second home people like we do. And they were like, the question was, how do we capture the second home people? Jordana will expand on the other stuff that was exciting, but how do we expand on the second home people and incorporate them and immerse them in our district and support our district, even though they don't live here full time? And with an outreach group that they put together internally, they really started having meetings and educating the second home people on the school district and their programs and their challenges, and really started getting support from the second home owners, everything from money to services, because in
it's an ongoing relationship. It's not one and done, it is ongoing. So it was really exciting to hear somebody with the same exact challenges all the way across the United States and Virginia, and hearing their the steep declining enrollment, formula, the formula funding is not fair to them. I mean, all of the things that we talk about, they talked about. So that was really exciting to know we're not alone, and get some of the ideas that they had to address some of the same challenges. I took another one, like out of you, and I took this one district's equity journey, and I provided that document in the email, and it really is like, it kind of validated, like we are taking the right path, because we're not knee-jerk reaction to what was going on with the George Floyd protests, and that we took a measured approach, saying we want long-term equity changes, and slow and steady wins the race, as they say. And so I really felt validated that we're on this journey, and this particular district expanded upon it. Like, after they did this, this is what they did. This is what they did. So you'll see the steps in that particular presentation. And so Monday, I think I went into a workshop, and I was like, yeah, I don't know, a portrait of a graduate. And I realized it was a company that did your portrait of the graduate with you. And I'm like, well, we already did this, and this is a waste of my time. So I just hopped into another workshop called Leading the Way, the Power of Podcasting to Educate Parents and Patrons. It's a school district outside Salt Lake City, just south of Jordan School District. The superintendent had been a principal and always had this idea. And when he became superintendent, he's like, I'm going to do this. I've always wanted to do podcasts about our district. I am so sick of the newspapers and social media bashing our district. I am changing the narrative, and I'm going to change it in a way that I think is fun, because he's definitely a woo. If you met him, he's a woo. He's my kind of guy. So he, with a couple people internally, they took a closet at their district office. They put a desk, a microphone, and recording equipment under $500 total. You could only fit 2 chairs. So there was the interviewer and the superintendent, and he dedicated 1 hour every Thursday in creating a podcast. And the podcast could be did you know, information about a program, information about a district, the budget, Jordan podcasts on budget. He would bring in, Tori Burke, our principal of Room High, let's interview her and get to know Tori Burke and what her passions are. And she will tell you AVID and equity, special education, and then you get to know Tori Burke and what's going on at the high school. And the whole idea was to create 20-minute to 30-minute podcasts. He said that for the parents, putting it on as they drove their kid to soccer practice across their community, because it took about 20 minutes to get to a soccer field. And he said, I wanted them to be able to listen to that podcast within that span of time. So it was very quick. He also would go out to campuses. He went to the EMT program, and you see him being an EMT in the program, the student. He put on the gear, he did the training, he did CPR, he did all the fire training with the kids, and they filmed it, and that became part of the whole podcast feed. They call it the Supercast. And the great part was that during COVID, he really used these podcasts as another way to communicate all the changing information that was going on, instead of just emails, because he felt like there were so many emails going out, people were just going, delete. Oh, it says COVID, delete. I can't do any more COVID. So it became another avenue for him to get to parents and the community. And the really great part is that it started getting picked up in the community, and then their local newscast caught wind of it and it went on the TV, and suddenly they have a ton of followers for the podcast. And all the podcasts are archived. So when something comes up, he's like, oh, I already have a podcast for that. Let's replay that podcast. So he's super energetic, and it's been a huge game changer in the way that they have changed the positive climate and culture of their district to combat all the negative stuff that he just couldn't take anymore. Next on the day, I did leading early literacy from the front. It was presented by Palo Alto Unified, which I thought was pretty cool. And really it was about how a board member was looking at data and really drilling down on literacy, reading and comprehension. And then he was taking what was on the CDE, the grade level, and then he was really looking in at each grade level, each group of students, especially Hispanic low-income students. Like there was Hispanics, but what about the low-income Hispanic students? How well did they do in grade 1? So he really went down deep, and yes, he went to Harvard, so I was like, okay, there you go, you have some time. And what he found was that Palo Alto, while their scores in reading on the CASP are like out through the roof, 80% and higher, that they were leaving, that they had some of the worst scores in the state, but at the very bottom for those students that he talked about. And he was shocked. He's like, I thought we were one of the best. We're touted as one of the best in the United States. And we are like at the bottom of California for these student groups. So he had a meeting with the superintendent, and he's like, have you seen this data? And the superintendent's like, not that detailed, but okay. And they started having a conversation, the board started having a conversation, realizing that solid literacy skills, both reading and comprehension, is just so important for reading the denser material of math, of science, and being successful in meeting the A through G requirements and post-secondary success. So they really focused on programs they create goals and success indicators. They did the whole job in targeting literacy. And then what they did is they put together goals, things that they were active things that they were going to do to address literacy, things that they were going to purchase, so to speak, and implement in the classrooms to address literacy. And that resulted in what I sent to you is they published to their community and published it everywhere and handed out the annual policy report, the literacy annual policy report. And it's pretty impressive in terms of how detailed it is, how comprehensive it is. And I just thought, wow, that is, and of course, when the guy was talking about the data collection, I was like, Joanna needs to be here this week, and Heather Dominguez and Tori need to be here because we're all data freaks. And so it was really fascinating how using your data and using it well to drive student achievement is effective. And their data on those student groups really has increased. COVID's, hit them a little bit, but they really have taken data-driven decision-making to a high level. And I just thought that was admirable and inspirational. And so of course I immediately went on the CDE. I started looking at how well we did on the different threads and reading and writing. And I'm like, oh, okay, in our various student groups. And it's just eye-opening. And then of course I was being really weird and then comparing, I know I shouldn't do this, Michelle, but I started comparing us with Big Bear because they're a sister district and similar demographics, and then I kind of wanted to cry. So just saying is that it was really, really interesting the way that they used data to course correct a huge
equity issue. Again, tying that into equity, is this fair? Is this fair to our students? Are we doing crime? And are we being criminal in our negligence of these students? It was a really, really fascinating discussion. So I went to some others, but those are my big ones. And I sent you all of that in an email. The Google link is to the podcast. Please check it out. It's a really fun presentation to see. And you can actually see his, the superintendent and everybody who's involved in the podcast, their excitement and enthusiasm. They just are so, they were adorable. They really were. Okay, I think that's it.
Anna, would you like to go next?
I'm gonna sit here though.
It's fine.
So before diving into sessions that I attended, just wanted to say, comparing NSBA with CSBA, I understand this NSBA was smaller than usual. I found the quality of the sessions that I went to be top notch. I was just really impressed. So I was really glad that I went. And I just, what was interesting about it to me, I felt like there was some sort of overriding story as I was attending these sessions. So rather than talk about in detail each of the different sessions, I instead saw some threads, and I wanted to share those with you instead of the, I have a lot of details. I took a lot of notes from the sessions, but I'm kind of hitting the highlights here, more in terms of threads. So let me see here. You didn't lose your notes like I did? I used pencil and paper. And Mark?
The other one, the other direction,
It's,
should have two arrows, one,
maybe I'm out of range.
I can hear it. Okay. No?
Okay, so I listed here some sessions I attended. Okay, so included were how to talk with your community, and keynote put on by Damon John from Shark Tank, Reinventing Education. Cindy already mentioned Life Ready's Rural Style. Another keynote was talking about Mr. Rogers, and I was a huge Mr. Rogers watcher from when I was like in preschool, and so that really resonated with me. And then making board communication effective and efficient, and then youth mental health solutions. So what was interesting, like I said, is there were certain threads. So I want to talk about those threads. And before I dive into that, I do want to hit on the things that aren't in the threads, and I'm going to come back to mental health at the end. So when Damon John, one of the Shark Tank sharks, talked about how he became a very successful business mogul without attending university whatsoever. And one of the things that he mentioned many times was the importance of financial literacy and how he didn't gain financial literacy from his formal education. It was more through the School of Hard Knocks that he ended up learning about finance. So in various presentations, financial literacy was brought up. So I felt that to be gratified, because that's a concern of mine. And so I wanted to make sure that that was also brought up here. And then in the Mr. Rogers keynote, it was so inspiring. I did buy their book. And their book is fantastic. And I'm going to talk about some of the things that they mentioned in one of the themes. But if you want to borrow it, the book is When You Wonder, You're Learning. And it's Mr. Rogers' Enduring Lessons for Raising Creative, Curious, Caring Kids. Tons and tons of research that's mentioned in here, and it's fantastic. So please, I would rather it not sit on my bookshelf. I'd rather it get used. So it's here, grab it for me if you like. So moving on to the next slide here. Well, actually going back a moment, I am doing it, hey, cool, is that making board communication effective and efficient, it was one of the less dynamic sessions I went to, but one of the gems that I got from them was the idea of having gem awards given at every single board meeting. And I'm at the moment blanking on GEM. It's, going the extra mile. So selecting folks from the community, more importantly, people on site, and providing a GEM to at every board meeting, and having local businesses provide maybe a gift certificate, coupon to a restaurant and the like, but having that recognition, calling it a GEM, I thought was pretty brilliant. Okay, so now I'm going to go on to the next one. So the first theme that I noticed, and it was really kind of bizarre, is how often portrait of a graduate, or sometimes called profile of a graduate, came up in the various sessions I went to. I thought it was pretty cool. The first one I went to was put on by Val Verde Unified School District. And what they talked about was they spent quite a bit of time putting together what they called their profile of the graduate. But what they were talking about was then, once it was put together, putting it to work and actually implementing it. And I think that's where we're at. So they talked about, in terms of implementing their portrait of a graduate, how important it is to give staff the green light to experiment and innovate. So not making success critical in the initial stages, but more in terms of, you're gonna fail, you're gonna fall. It is a journey, as we just said, and making sure that we allow, as a board, to allow experimentation that may not have a guarantee of success, but we'll learn along the way. They brought up some things that they did, one of them being they have a very robust vegetable garden, and it is highly productive, and they sell vegetables to their own food services that are then served through their child nutrition services. I thought that was super cool. And then they also have an amazing STEAM lab. We partnered with Garner Holt, and they are using STEAM as their engine to implement portrait of a grad. So this was all presented in community outreach, in terms of that was what the topic of the session was. But they were talking about how they were using their CTE courses and career pathways, partnering with the community and communicating with the community, finding out what the community saw as a need in terms of skill sets in graduates. So doing that research and then putting into the curriculum life-ready skills, and using their STEAM lab to develop students that were ready to hit university or hit career and having some really marketable skills, implementing their portrait of a graduate. And then similarly, what Cindy mentioned is when we went to the rural school district presentation was in Virginia, and again, their demographics were very similar to Brenda Williams in the paragraph there. They have these very robust CTE academies, and those CTE academies drive their implementation of portrait of a graduate. So they have what they call Stackable Certification. So they focused on life readiness for students, and they described it as having a 3D focus: enrollment, meaning into university or post high school education; employment, so career ready; or enlistment, because in their community, as in ours, they have quite a few graduates go on to the military. So again, providing opportunities for students in any of these areas and making sure that they're as prepared as possible. They have stackable certifications. They worked hard to support their staff to get qualified such that the students were able to get certifications as part of their education. One of their teachers had formerly been a veterinary technician, and already had that expertise, but she wasn't educated to the point of being able to certify students. They got her that certification. She was interested in it. She had that skill set. So they have students who are graduating from their health sciences thread for their career pathways with a vet tech certification, which is just phenomenal. They have career pathways in health sciences, so the medical field, in agriculture, such that they are looking to have students in high agriculture economy area. So looking at having students who fix tractors. They went a little bit into agriculture in terms of plucking chickens and the like, and that might be a little bit beyond what California might be ready to do, but it was something that they're also considering fine arts, HVAC, plumbing, and welding in terms of certifications coming in the next year. But they are using their portrait of a graduate and career paths to be able to, and they're also partnering with their community, looking at where there's need and where there's also financial support within the community to be able to educate the students. It was very exciting. And and again, it was a couple of different sessions that I went to, and I kept on hearing about profile of the graduate, as they called it. Another thread, let me go ahead and see if I can do this. I'm doing it twice here. Boom, big 202. Let me scroll up here. It's encouraging student to wonder and also experience things and using that as a motivation for learning. This book, Mr. Rogers, he was a brilliant man, and he actually, what he did in his shows was very research-based. And so he was encouraged and wondering. And so one of the things that's listed in this book that was also mentioned in that keynote speech was that researchers have found that 18-month-old to 5-year-olds on average, ask about 100 questions per hour. And that is on average if there's an attentive, interested adult. That wondering spurs learning. But then they also said is, again, research-based after students, kids have been in school for a couple of years, 11-year-olds often go hours without asking a single question. So our formal education system basically takes away that wonder and takes away, what was that? Yes, very much so. Why this? Why it's exhausting for the adult. But there is a curiosity that's natural, and they are in learning mode, and our formal education program tends to shut that down. And so another session I went to, and that actually you and I went to that together, Cindy and I did. It was the guy out of the YouTube video. Actually, I'm skipping ahead here. Yeah, I'm going to skip ahead. Was talking about a backwards bicycle that was engineered so that if he turned left with the handlebars, it would go right, and vice versa. And it took him months to learn how to ride this bike. Months. And then he had his son, who I think was 6 years old, try to learn how to do it. It took him a couple of weeks. So what both this book and what that video was emphasizing is brain plasticity. The younger human, their brains are more elastic and they are more primed for learning. And those questionings and those experiences that they're not necessarily getting are taking away their experience, their opportunities to learn. Found that to be fascinating. Another presentation I went to was put on by a Montessori high school teacher. And he was doing all sorts of crazy things. But he kept on talking about how important experiences for kids. You throw them in front of a lecture, it's going to take 400 repetitions for them to learn something. Where he said you do it playfully, you have them engaged, you have them doing, experiencing things, it takes 10 to 20 repetitions. If it's play, if it's fun, they're going to learn more. So he was just emphasizing over and over again in various wacky ways that fun is an undervalued resource. So again, it was that the brain elasticity, it's experience, it's questioning, it's engaging our students and getting them really primed to learn what it is that we wish for them to learn. It's fantastic. So I'm talking about that backwards bicycle. I urge you to watch it. It was a fantastic video. I have the YouTube on this presentation. If you want, the link, I'll be happy to send it to you. I think that was it from this slide. Let me go on to my last page here, which was on mental health. I went to this session with Heather, and I don't know if you were going to discuss this or not, other groups, but we were blown away, I think, by this presentation. Free youth mental health resources, word free. So the story behind the presenter is that for the people who put together these free resources, I don't remember which corporation you're attached to, but next door neighbors, there's a child who committed suicide. Conversation, I think, with their 5 kids, the family who put this together, they're very wealthy. All 5 of their children mentioned they knew somebody or who had contemplated suicide or had attempted suicide. And they saw this as just being a travesty that they could do something about. So they really focused on it and have put together a free website called parentguidance.org, and they provide resources in both English and Spanish. This website focuses on helping parents help their students. Quote I wrote down is, we need to train families and parents how to address the mental needs of their children. So there are all sorts of free resources on this website. They provide lessons to the adults. The lessons are provided for both the knowledge and the language to use if their child is in a situation. An example that they mentioned that I saw on the website too is helping their child when they're bullied, and many more topics. So understandably, parents go ballistic when they see or hear stories from their children about things that have happened, that they don't necessarily have the tools to be able to work with their child at this time. Through this website, these parents can have these professionally presented lessons on how to be able to discuss these situations with their children, how to be able to advocate for them, and not just with bullying, but all sorts of different situations, providing assistance and lessons to the adults on how to be able to work with their kids. Site includes all sorts of resources, including Ask a Therapist, parent coaching, and also provides staff development. And again, this is free. There is a paid portion of this website that the school district could subscribe to, but there is a vast number of resources that are available right now without us paying a penny. Another website, another program that was discussed in these free youth mental health resources is a whole station on YouTube called My Life is Worth Living. So it is an animated series that was done by the same team who did the Rugrats movie. And these are 20 different episodes covering 5 different themes, addressing some pretty touchy subjects more for secondary level students. So these are videos. We also provide staff development, and there's curriculum for these subjects. They're also provided for free. They cartoons gently addressing various kinds of situations schools the students might find themselves in. And along with the videos, there's discussion topics and there's support for staff and how to be able to address these issues, and it is free. So I think it's definitely worth vetting and us looking into. I think it would be helpful for our staff to be aware of this being available and possibly developing a strategy around possibly showing these videos.
Before we go on to you, Natalie, wait a second. So Jordan and I, after the rural school district presentation, we had a break afterwards, and we were like leeches. The two of us just followed them and we sat with them and we asked a million questions about everything from how did they create change, because they were in declining enrollment and now they have they stabilized, or actually from Jordan has her notes since mine are gone. They found that the CTE pathways that they developed with certifications, with internships, with work experience, with all of that, really gave them the tools necessary to kind of market and publicize their district and all the great things that they're doing in their district. And they really tapped into the needs of their community. Agriculture is huge, therefore agricultural pathway. And of course the vet, of course, they have a ton of animals. Their enrollment actually increased when they started really taking advantage of their strengths and working with their community on the pathways. And then getting that next layer of the support from the second home people was a huge leap for them. And we were asking a ton of questions. What the board member who I was talking to said, okay, so Lake Arrowhead in the mountains, resort, skiing, mountain biking, hiking. He's like, really, hospitality and tourism should be one of your pathways. I'm not saying what to do. This is what he said. You take advantage of what your community needs and your strengths and where the jobs are in your local community. And I thought that was really interesting how quickly he started talking about pathways in our, I talked about that we had EMT, medical pathway, and what we were doing with that, including the ambulance simulator, the ER, we're moving forward with that. And he was just like, there you go. Health industry, medical industry is a huge growth sector. He's like, yeah, you guys
have some really great things going in your district. So Jordan and I really we were like students. We were just asking him a lot of questions and listening and taking. Jordan and I both took a lot of notes, and it was just really a great conversation. Do you agree? I found them fascinating.
Absolutely, and definitely thought it made it more accessible for us to be able to do something similar.
Thank you. So for myself, also attended obviously the two keynote speakers, David John's just an amazing presenter. It was so much fun. The music, the lights, and then his story is remarkable. You know, that the vast majority of the audience for Shark Tank are actually children, and that they're young entrepreneurs, we're talking about the entrepreneurial spirit of young kids and financial literacy and all of that was wonderful. No need to repeat it. In saying Mr. Rogers, the presentation about him and that kind of fostering curiosity, and that we lose our throughout either maturity, not blaming it all on education, obviously, but throughout our maturity, we lose our willingness or desire to ask why. And it's definitely not because of all of us adults having all the answers to every question, but you know, I hear a lot of parents tell their kids, stop asking why, because I said so. The answer is because I said so. And you know, like you think of how that continues to shut a kid down and down and down. Even in class, you know, sometimes our more destructive behavior students are the ones always raising their hands and getting up and asking all the questions. And understandably, you have to manage the class and get through the content and get presented what needs to be presented to all the students, but making sure we're not, you know, killing that, squashing that curiosity or killing that curiosity for these students. You know, one of the presentations I watched was about really when you break it down, like connection and being engaged, and obviously like school safety, mental health, all of that. And pleasure in coming to school comes from having something that you're connected to, or a person that you're connected to, and really feeling engaged. So what this school district kind of put onto their counseling team at the high school was ensuring that not only students are meeting the academic requirements, the A through G requirements, yada yada, but they always had a extra, you know, a bonus, a fun, a connection, whatever it was, whether that be sports, whether that be music, dance, drama, a club, or maybe just a person who was their go-to person who they always felt connected to. Kind of highlighting the importance of that for every student, and making sure no one got just kind of left behind because their academics were adequate and their grades were adequate and they weren't really a behavior problem. So we didn't really notice them, but it only takes like one special person to see something special in that student and really send them on a different trajectory for life. And it ties with the discussion of the impact of one person, which you had recommended, and Michelle had been doing the Heart for All videos, and I hope that as we move into our new journey and our new phase with the new superintendent, that is something that we could continue, because it only takes one person to really make a huge impact and a huge difference in a student's life. So I enjoyed things like that. I took one on communication styles, which really was about board relationships and not particularly entertaining to the rest of the crowd. So I don't necessarily need to talk about that one. I also did one on the superintendent search, which we have now finished. Again, not particularly relevant or fun for the rest of the crowd to talk about. There was a theme, like you said, of the portrait of the graduate. I heard it several times, and the career pathways too, and other districts' way of going about that. The final thing that I think might be something that we can implement at some of the sites potentially quickly, as I know Tori has done a lot of work with the Wellness Center here. It's really geared to students having access to it. But I watched a presentation on a district who does wellness nights at all of the schools for families. So it's a family wellness night where a lot of the things that you talked about, kind of just learning how, basic psychoeducation, how to talk to your student about mental health, about bullying or issues with depression, anxieties, anything a little bit more severe. How do I get referrals in my community for that? So it may be something that potentially Mountain Counseling can partner with, maybe even with the PTAs, and the PTA can host that wellness night on site, have Mountain Counseling come and do maybe a 45-minute presentation about these are the common, behavioral or mental health issues that we see amongst adolescents, teens, whatever the age group is for what school you're at, and how we could start normalizing conversations about those things. I think the reason it doesn't happen as much as I would like it to, and we're slowly getting there as a society, is there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of lack of education, there's people who believe that if I talk about it, it makes it worse, or it makes it real, or, we're hopefully moving away from that, where it's just an open conversation, same as medical concerns. If you have diabetes, are you not going to talk about it? And is a parent not going to do research to try to find out how do I get the best care for my kid and what kind of meals I need to give them and yada, yada, yada. It needs to go the same for mental health. So I could talk, obviously, I do talk all day about mental and behavioral health, and I could go on and on, but that just felt like a tangible thing that we could potentially implement fairly easily with the support of PTA and Mountain Counseling on our sites at this time. So I know others attended. I didn't know if this was supposed to just be the board or, oh,
No, it's all, but I have a question. I have a couple of these. So in regards to the whole idea, Jordan, and jump into that, younger, they're asking questions, the why, what about this, and what does this do, and all that. And as they age, as children age, the questions become less and less. Do you also think, just asking for opinion, does puberty play a part in peer pressure, especially when you get into middle school and the whole idea of like, I don't want to put myself out there. I just feel awkward. I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to be made fun of if I give the wrong answer. If I ask a stupid question, am I going to be laughed at, or people are going to make fun, give me a hard time? Do you think that also plays a part of it?
I do, and I think creating a safe culture, and we can do that in mini pods, right? Like each classroom creates a safe culture, each school site creates a safe culture, the whole district creates a safe culture where bullying isn't going to come because you asked a dumb question in class. I'm taking this based off of my own experience, and I'm a perfectionist. I never wanted to be wrong, even as a little kid. So I wouldn't maybe volunteer to put myself out there, even though I'm an outgoing person, even though I just wanted to make sure whatever I was going to say was right first. So why not? Or
The more they get subconscious as they grow older, it's almost like they inhibit themselves. The other thing is that I agree, PTA could definitely help in hosting those nights. LAE and Grandview, so of course I'm dating myself on this, but we got together and we paid for a 6-week program called Parenting with Love and Logic with Ginger Gabriel. And she came and she did Grandview and she did LAE. The 2 PTAs covered her fee. We had refreshments, and those parenting classes, because they were from baby all the way through high school. So it was very, the issues facing, how do you handle toddler tantrums? How do you handle the moodiness of a teenager and the rebellion of a teen? I mean, just everything that those were covered in that 6-week session. And we actually, believe it or not, had between 40 and 60 parents every single session. So the need is out there for support
for parents to have those tools to navigate the challenges of their kid growing up, especially in this day and age. How do you monitor social media, the kids' social media without invading that space? In my household, I paid your bill, so you have no privacy. So that, I mean, I think that's a brilliant suggestion, like working with our PTAs to do stuff like that. I want to go back to the question you asked earlier as well in terms of the questioning. I can't imagine being a combo kindergarten TK teacher and having 25 students and having all of them asking 100 questions an hour. I mean, there's just a flat out logistics issue. And then I also think about the work that Dr. White did in the Social Justice and Equity Committee, where one of the important things that was done was having listening groups. And so just a thought I have is that I think that if there is a way to implement more listening, so it's really hard if you have 25, 30 students in a class to really provide that thoughtful listening, but that might be what's missing, is it would be not just the questions, but it's also a matter of being able to be heard when there's just such a high ratio of students to adults.
Right, and we're teaching not listening many times, right? And there's that barrier that you could, but on this backbone, the parents, on the family, that listening, you know, if we're helping by doing some of these wellness things, one topic should be listening. How do we listen to our kids? How do we do reflective listening? How do we do motivational interviewing and active listening to get them, not that we're going to train parents to be therapists, but there are some simple skills that therapists use that anybody can use. You can paraphrase, you can rephrase, you can kind of reflect again back to ensure that they feel heard. Yes, you understand what they're asking or what they're saying, but it's making them feel heard that is the most powerful part of it. And you know, some people are better skilled at that naturally than others, and the expectation I don't think is to, you know, place the blame or the responsibility on teachers for students not being curious anymore. It's just it's a system and societal way of growing up, and their brains are changing and things are happening that limit our curiosity.
I always remember, one more thing before we go, Heather, is that you just remind me of that line in the Breakfast Club when Ali says, "When we grow old, we die." That, I mean, and it just, I remember that moment because they're all talking about these kinds of issues and getting deep
And our goal is to be a lifelong learner, right? So then you need to be curious and asking questions lifelong.
I just wanted to add to your topic that you were talking about. It was interesting that today we did a superintendent day with the county, and the book that they're having us read is about having conversations. And the chapter that I read today, we picked a different chapter to read. And the chapter that I read today talked about the most productive conversations happen in groups size less than 6, and how we do surveys. That might have been the chapter you read, but how we do surveys and other things aren't effective, and why they're not effective, and how it's to get better feedback and how biases play in conversation. So very interesting conversation that Kim and I talked about, you know, bringing that forward to our leaders in the district. But really what we think about conversation and how we listen isn't true listening and conversation. So really interesting book study that might play into some of your thoughts about this. I will say before Heather goes, I'm really glad you went because it was in California. The times that I have attended and spoke at NSBA, it's such a rich environment to learn about things in other states and other boards and other superintendents, just like when I attended the National Superintendent Conference when it was in California. Because sometimes CSBA and AXA, our state organizations, tend to have the same sessions over and over again, the same speakers. And so it's so great that you went and took my advice. I'm sorry I couldn't attend with you. I'm so glad that Heather could go with you. But it's that perspective of looking outside of California, because California is its own animal.
Yeah, the guys from Oklahoma, I went to one that was about CTA, and they used a closed, what? Oh, a closed campus, and it became, they repurposed that closed campus to be kind of like a magnet school, what that focus was, and they had started CTE pathways and how it changed their school district, but they wore cowboy hats, nothing against that, but they were just so entertaining with their, from Oklahoma. I was like, wow, there you go. Oklahoma, of all places.
I would say it does help you recognize the differences in different states, but also made me feel like all of the similarities, right? Like none of the topics were things that like, oops, our board doesn't talk about those things, or oh, I've been in education and I don't know anything about that. Like that wasn't the case. It was all like, okay, these are on the path of things that we've been talking about that we're all, you know, have identified as areas that we want to grow and improve in, or things that we already do. There was nothing so far out there where I was like, as a school board member, I should have known that. So that felt really good too.
Another thing that I noticed was sitting, waiting for sessions to open, or, you know, to start, a lot more interaction with the folks, and, you know, just there, I was talking, and not the boo, and I tend to be a little bit more introverted, but time and time again, there was great, rich conversation with the folks that I was sitting there, and learning a lot from them, just in a much more informal setting. Heather,
Or Heather.
That's okay. I have to say it was two of the best general sessions I've ever attended, including anything with CSDA or AXA. They were outstanding. I'm still in awe that the guy that invented FUBU is the same guy that I paid $25 for a teenager's Bombas socks. He's shifted his entrepreneurship from hip hop to really too expensive socks on children. It was good to watch. I also purchased the book and have read that, and I have the privilege of, in the courses I teach now, I get to choose one selection for fun reading, and that is the first selection that I want all the teachers to read. So the research based of the wonder and children's voice was important. I learned several years back from Dr. Baker, who was with Victor Elementary for many years, that to go to a conference, stop trying to look at everything and go to one thing and focus on one thing that you want to learn deeply about. And so I tried to do that, and I focused on the SEL of staff, and not on students this time, but on staff. And I took one big takeaway that was in two different sessions, is the importance of the unstructured staff. The importance of post-COVID for staff to come together with a little bit of food and time for them to talk with each other rather than us talking with them. And that will be a way to move out of COVID. It was two different sessions that mentioned different names for the unstructured staff meeting. So I'm so pleased that as we return in August, we're going to have that unstructured staff meeting welcome time for staff to get together. It also talked about staff retention, and sorry, RTA, it's two different sessions talked about finances are not staff retention. That you can throw money at things all day long, and once you're at a certain level, but it's how people feel about how they're treated and how they're heard and how they're listened to. It's things that we've known deeply for many, many years. It was such a good reminder. And of course, all of these went with COVID. Coming out of COVID, how do we reinforce these things? The last session that I attended was from our board docs company. And it's a freebie that they do for us on reestablishing your connection to your why, and to how do you go about truly remembering why you went into this profession. And it was a very, very good session. So I did a lot of that, and Joanne and I went up and what I thought of the session, or just that last one together of trying to look at. And the people that did the company is, I'm going to say it wrong, Essential Oils doTERRA. Did I say that right? That's who owned the company. Those are the wealthy people. They invented or owned doTERRA. I just remember that part.
I think it was really well worth going. I enjoyed myself. I enjoyed the workshop. And I agree with Nellie, it was validating.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? All right, we shall move on to our action calendar. It is 12.0, action calendar, 12.1, superintendent adoption of resolution number 21-22/22, order of the election of specifications of the election order of the Rural Unified School District governing board members whose terms expire November 8th, 2022. The following governing board members' terms expire November 8th, 2022. Area 1, Dr. William Mellinger, Crestline. Area 2, Jordana Redmond, Crestline. Area 4, Natalie Lindsman, Lake Arrowhead. Fiscal impact to be determined. Costs will be prorated among the school districts and other agencies consolidating with the election. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Bill and Cindy, any discussion? Calling for the vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. 12.2. Superintendent, approval of the update authorized signature listing with the San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools for the new superintendent. In accordance with the provisions of legal codes for the state of California, the governing board of the Rural Unified School District hereby approves and adopts the actions described below. Please add Dr. Kimberly Fricker, superintendent effective July 1st, 2022. And delete Michelle Murphy, superintendent, effective July 1st, 2022. Fiscal impact, none.
So moved.
Bill?
Second.
Cindy? Any discussion? Seeing none, calling for the vote, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. 13.2, personnel services, approval of the personnel page. The personnel page entails all actions requested by the Board of Personnel Department. Fiscal impact to be determined, various accounts personnel.
So moved. And that was 12.3.
Thank you.
Second.
Bill, any discussion? Seeing none, calling for the vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. 12.4, educational services, approval of the local control and accountability plan, LCAP, and the local measures annual reporting. The local control and accountability plan, LCAP, is an allocation and program plan for the local control funding formula, LCFF. Annual board approval of this plan and local measure is required. The measures dashboard include LCAP, priority 1, basic conditions of school, priority 2, implementation of state academic standards, priority 3, parent engagement, option 1, survey, priority 6, school climate, and priority 7, access to a board versus study. District goals, student learning, college and career readiness, highly qualified staff, safe, well-maintained and secure facilities, and community involvement. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Cindy?
Second.
Bill? Any discussion?
Thank you, Heather, and your team for, again, doing, all the work on the LCAP and the changing template that they say is never going to change again, but does the next year. So thank you so much for keeping on top of all of those changes and making sure that we are staying on task.
I'm looking forward to next year's LCAP process. We'll start it again right after this.
Look at you, Mr. Optimistic.
I'm sure I do.
She's out.
Good for you. Thank you, Heather. Calling for the vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. 12.5, educational services, approval of the single plan for student achievement, SIPSA, for CHE, Charles Hoffman, Lake Arrowhead, and BOE, Valley of Enchantment Schools, MPH Middle School, Ribbon High, and Mountain High Schools for the 2022-2023 school year. As part of the regulations of EC 64001, and any school district receiving categorical funding must develop a single plan for student achievement such that the plan is required to be reviewed annually, and any subsequent revision shall be reviewed and approved by the governing board of the local education agency at regularly scheduled meetings whenever there are material changes that affect the academic programs for students served by the program. This fulfills district goals: number 1, student learning; number 6, budget, infrastructure, and resources. Fiscal impact, none.
So moved.
Cindy?
Seconded.
Diana? Any discussion?
I want to thank the principals, the staff, and the site council for all their work that they do during the course of the year to monitor their SIPSAs and then develop a new SIPSA in the spring based upon all the awesome data that they get to review. And I just know it's a lot of work, and I appreciate all of it that you guys do. Rock on and fight on, Heather. Keep fighting on.
Yeah, just gave you an eye roll.
Don't start me.
Calling for the vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. 12.6, approval for furniture quotes for 4 classrooms at Mountain High School. Action to choose one furniture vendor out of 3 different quotes for new classroom furniture for 4 Mountain High School classrooms, recommending Sierra School equipment, Dove School combined into groups of 4 and 5 for collaborative learning as well as individual learning. May I get a motion?
So moved.
Oh, please, hold on, the layout of this was different for some reason. I wanted to mention that the fiscal impact is $35,386.18 out of CSI funds.
Still so moved.
Thank you, Cindy. Can you give a second?
I'll second.
Second by Janet, any discussion?
I'm just excited that you will walk into those classrooms and there may be group learning going on instead of those rows with those tiny little desks. Don't know why they seem so small at Mountain High School, but I'm super excited for them.
Michelle, if you could, I know this is not a big amount of money, but why didn't we select the the highest bid as our recommendation?
I spoke to Mr. Nygren about that, who couldn't be here this evening. But in looking at the furniture, they like the quality of the top of the furniture, thinking that will last longer, as well as the ability to group students in various grouping settings because of their shape, so that they could make small groups, large groups, medium-sized groups, single desks, so that they felt that was more conducive to what they're trying to achieve at Mountain High School. In changing how kids interact with one another, and the desks they have now often, and I know it's not just at Mountain High School, but can't fit in, and so these funds are allowed to be used for that.
Thank you.
And just for reference, I think the other quotes, the lowest one was about a $6,000 difference between all of them. So they're all relatively effective.
So this vote again is to recommend the Sierra, or to approve the Sierra School classroom furniture out of the. Any further discussion? Calling for the vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. 12.7, business services, approval to adopt the district's proposed 2022-2023 budget.
So moved.
Seconded. Any discussion?
I just want to thank Jenny and her staff. And I know that this is your crazy season, so I know that just doing the budget is just the very tip of the iceberg. So just appreciate all that you and your staff do and the work in collaboration across all departments that has to go on to complete the budget. So thank you so much for everybody. And still fight on, Jordana.
Without further discussion, I will, oh, thank you.
I'm looking forward to starting our next budget, right, for next year.
It's an ongoing process, this stuff, all of it, right? Okay, calling for the vote, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. 13.0 consent calendar. Items pulled for separate vote and discussion to be taken into consideration. Action item 14.0. Does anybody have any items they would like to pull? Yes, hold on.
Uh, 13.14.
So I will ask for a motion. Any others? I'll ask for a motion for 13.1, 13.2, 13.3, 13.4, 13.5, 13.6, 13.7, 13.8, 13.9, 13.10, 13.11, 13.12, 13.13, 13.15, and 13.16.
So,
Bella is the first,
Second.
Cindy is the second. Any discussion? Calling for the vote, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes those motions pass unanimously. 13.4, business services, donations for the Room of the World High School Music Program. Donations for the Room of the World High School Music Program. This will impact $1,000.
So moved.
Cindy, or I'm sorry, Dana. And a second.
second.
Bill, and now we can have a discussion.
We need to abstain from this vote.
Thank you, Cindy. That being said, calling for the vote, all in favor? Aye. With one abstaining. Motion passes. 14.0, items removed from the consent calendar. I apologize, I did not want to already. 15.0, governance team future agenda items and planning. 15.1, 10 allotted for the Board of Trustees to request agenda items for future meetings.
I wanted to revisit the discussion about CIL sports, just in terms of whether that would be something that would be, and you won't be present for the August, or Heather Briggs won't be present for the August board meeting. So whether it's something that we can just receive in writing, or whether it should be something that should be a discussion scheduled for future board meeting, just wondering in terms of timing.
If I may, I have the presentation mostly done and it can be given to the predecessor or successor.
Thank you. Thanks. 16.0, future meeting dates. Board retreat, July 21st, 2022 at 9:00 a.m. Room of the World Unified School District 27315 North Bay Road, Blue Jay, California 92317. Please note when it says board retreat, it does not mean we are all going to Hawaii together. As much as I would love us to, we're going to the district office to work all day.
No umbrella jokes.
The next one after that would be the regular board meeting, August 8th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. Room of the World High School Library, 27400 Highway 18, Lake Arrowhead, California, 92352. 17.0, recess to closed session if necessary. I was not there at the end of closed session. Is it necessary? Okay, so we are going to be returning to closed session. The Board of Trustees are hereby recessed to closed session at 7:37.